You're listening to Dear Strategy, where we answer all of your questions on product and business strategy. And now, here's your host, Bob Caporelli.
Welcome to another episode of Dear Strategy, where we answer all of your questions about product and business strategy. Real questions from real people in real companies just like yours. Welcome back, strategy creators, to episode 98 of Dear Strategy. Before we get to today's question, as always, let me just give a shout out to the sponsor of the show, the company I founded and own and work for, Strategy Generation Company. We offer tools and training, resources, toolkits, all kinds of great stuff, all around the subject of teaching you how to put together a better product marketing or business strategy. So go out to our website, strategygeneration.com. You learn more about what we do, the tools that we can provide, and you can support this show by buying something from us. So be sure to go do that, strategygeneration.com. In the meantime, let's go ahead and get to today's question, which actually is a continuation of last week. I said last week that I would talk about the difference between a product-based structure and a market-based structure, and therefore a product-based strategy and a market-based strategy. Because last week's question, we talked about getting buy-in for a strategy, and one of the conditions that were mentioned there was an organization that is not a product or service-based organization or structured like a product or service-based organization. So the only thing I could think of there is that maybe they're structured like a market-based organization. But I said I would cover that in another show. So here it is. So that kind of translates into my own version of this question here, which is, Dear Strategy, what's the difference between a product-based organization and a market-based organization? And how does that translate into product and marketing strategies? So again, that's kind of my question, right? But I'm going to answer it because I do think that, first of all, it's a good continuation from the discussion we were having last week, but it is also something that I run into quite a bit in the work that I do through Strategy Generation Company, and I wanted to talk about this a bit. So large companies, large enterprises are usually either organized in one of two ways. One is as a product-based company, and two is as a market-based organization. And when you see this difference in real life, it's not that one company doesn't sell products and the other does, right? It just has to do with the way that they're structured internally. So let's talk about what that means a little bit. So when you have a market-based organization, that only means that you're structured primarily around the markets that you want to serve. So we see this a lot in business-to-business companies that serve large vertical industries or vertical markets. And essentially, they might have a group that's dedicated to oil and gas, a group that's dedicated to pharmaceuticals, a group that's dedicated to pulp and paper. And so they'll take the biggest markets that they serve, and they have full top-to-bottom structures that serve those markets. And usually those are kind of matrixed into the organization so that there are still product teams, right? But what's happening is that the market teams are the primary organization structure, and they're drawing from the product teams whatever products they need to sell into those markets. So you basically get product teams that are supporting multiple market organizations and market organizations that are drawing from multiple different product teams. So that's kind of how that matrix kind of goes together. But the real key is that companies that are structured that way, they're structured primarily around the market first and the product second. The other way that you could do this is, of course, just reverse that, right? So instead of having market first, product second, you have product first, market second. I would say that this is the most common way that companies are organized, simply because it's easier from a financial standpoint to track products and therefore organize your groups or your internal structure around those financial reports. So products are going to have clear revenue associated with them, clear cost of goods associated with them. They're usually manufactured in distinct manufacturing facilities. So almost top to bottom, you can get a full P&L based on product, whereas for market, that's a little bit harder to do. So internal structures, I would say it's more common to structure your company by product first, market second. Now, that does not mean that that's the way that you go to market. And this is something that I think a lot of people confuse. Most companies will say we're a market-led organization. Being market-led means that you listen to the market first and then develop products based on what you hear from the market. You can be a market-led organization, whether you're structured by product or structured by market. Structuring yourself by market doesn't automatically make you a market-led organization, although I have seen some companies that confuse those things, right? Say, well, we're structured by market, therefore we're market-led. No, the only way that you can be market-led is if you're actually listening to the market and then developing your products based on that. You can do that if you're structured by product or by market, doesn't matter. So don't confuse that. But kind of coming back to the difference between a product organization and a market organization, that's the difference. Market organizations are organized by the markets they serve. Product organizations are organized by the products that they serve into those markets. Now, when you come down to the differences between the strategies, it is true that market organizations will have market-based strategies that they should be using to guide their businesses. Product-based organizations should be using product-based strategies that they're using to guide their businesses. The structure of those strategies, the process for those strategies, all the things you consider for those strategies are exactly the same. You still have an analysis section where you're considering your company, your customers, your competitors. You still have goals. You still have strategic initiatives. You still have tactics or an action plan. You still have investments. You still have results. All the same things that we teach in our strategy process, we talk about on this blog and on this podcast all the time. Same exact thing between product strategies or market strategies. The absolute only difference is that for a product strategy, you're starting with a group of products, and then your strategy is going to be talking about which markets you want to serve with those products. Marketing strategy or market strategy, exactly the reverse of that, where you're starting with a market that you want to serve, and your strategy is covering what kinds of products you want to put into that market, right? So same information, just starting with a different structure, right? And that's all that there is to it. Now, in some companies, especially those that are organized by market, you will have both market teams and product teams. And both of those teams will have strategies for their products and markets. And what you need to do in those cases is make sure that those strategies are coordinated. The worst thing that you could have is a market strategy that is not in sync with the product strategy within the same organization. So if you have a market strategy that draws from multiple different products, then that market strategy has to consider those multiple different product strategies and make sure that those are all aligned and respected and so forth. Similarly, the products, which are now being sold into multiple different markets, if there are multiple different market strategies in the organization, those product strategies have to coordinate with those multiple different market strategies to make sure that those are aligned and in sync and so forth. Because if they're not, then you're going to have market groups going off one direction, product groups going off in another direction, and the company will completely be split apart, divisive inside. It's politically a nightmare. Customers will be confused. Messages will be confused. Everything just goes off the rails. And I've seen some version of this happen in some shape, form, or fashion because product groups and market groups are not talking to one another enough. Now, if you ask me, do I think that both need to exist? I would say it's not a bad practice as long as you can make sure that they're coordinated. I would tell you the model that I usually see more of and the one that I come from, right, the one I'm more comfortable in is kind of product structured. And those product teams are the ones that would decide what markets they want to go into. Now, when you take a structure like that, if you don't have a market team that exists, then the product managers have to be communicating to make sure that their market strategies are not completely different. But I think that could be done with a fair amount of ease. So I don't know that they both need to exist. The only thing I do know is if they both do exist within an organization, that they have to be coordinated really, really closely, because I think it's much more dangerous if they both exist, that they both think they're leading and instead of thinking that they're equals, right? And then things don't really work out so well. So again, I think product-based structures with, good support from good marketing teams is probably the preferred methodology without having a full market structure and a full product structure. But that's just my preference more than something that works right or wrong. Again, no matter what exists, market strategies and product strategies need to be coordinated. And that's the most important point, because although they are not different in process, they are going to be different as far as what their focus is, and they have to be coordinated because they will overlap at some point in time. Okay, so hopefully that answers that question and also brings a little clarity to what we were talking about last week. Again, if you have a question that you want to be featured on the show, please hit us up at dearstrategy.net or dearstrategy.com. Go to the Ask a Question link and you could submit a question to be featured on the show, or you could just leave us a comment, or you can comment on our blogs. And you need to make sure that you read all of our blogs, because we have a blog that goes along with every episode that we add a lot more information, a lot more insight. And again, it's all free. So go out there and check that out. And while you're doing all of that, don't forget to make time for the plan. And we'll see you back here on another episode of Dear Strategy. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for listening to Dear Strategy with Bob Caparelli. To learn more or to submit a question to be featured on our show, please visit us at dearstrategy.net.